What is up guys, how are you doing? This is one of two videos. I was lucky enough to mess around with both the Samsung Galaxy S20 series and the Galaxy Z Flip because they were announced this week and I went to check them out. It was a lot of fun and I tried filming on location. Although it looked like this, it sounded like this. I'm not sure why that happened. I think the cable that I used to connect my wireless lapel mic from like the pack, the receiver to the camera is broken because everything else seemed fine. It was just really annoying because I had some really good on-site footage of me like handling the phone and talking about it, but it's fine, we're going to do this instead, it'll sound better and whatever. In this video specifically, let's talk about the S20 series, because bloody hell is that a variety of phones. Starting out at £800 and peaking at £1,400, it's not exactly a cheap range. In fact, a maxed out S20 Ultra comes in at more than the Z Flip, or the Z Flip, or the whatever you're going to call it. But if you want to hear about the Z Flip, there's a separate video coming out about that. It was an incredible device, but keep your eyes peeled for that. It'll be with you soon-ish, like in the next day or two. It should be ASAP. I'm literally filming these back to back. With so little in common between these three devices, I think it's only fair that we start with the similarities. They all come with a 1440 by 3200 display, meaning that technically the bigger the phone and the higher end you go, like the lower end the display is because it's less pixels per inch, but they're all the same resolution and they are all gorgeous. I've heard numerous reports that only the Ultra does 120Hz at 1440p, or that only the base one can't do it, and stuff like that. To put it very clearly, none of them do 120Hz at 1440p. They all do 1080p 120Hz, or 1440p at 60Hz. It's a real shame that there's no 90Hz option, because I feel like that's a perfect middle ground. 90Hz at 1440p I feel like would have been perfect, but as far as I'm aware, it's a battery life concern, and it is technically something that could be released via software, but I don't expect it to. I do expect it to be something that shows up in the Note 20 series, though, which is very exciting. The only other real similarity is the SoC. If you're in the US or Canada, you'll get the Snapdragon 865, and if you're anywhere else, you get the Exynos 990. Finally, the only other thing they can all do is film in 8K, which I've looked at and, like, it's cool, but I don't imagine anyone using it anytime soon. And on the subject of cameras, this is where everything kind of splits. We have the S20 and the S20 Plus, which I'm going to be putting into like a class of its own. Both of those have a 12 megapixel main camera, a 64 megapixel zoom camera up to 3 times optical zoom, and a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera. Those are f1.8, f2.0 and f2.2 respectively. Something I noticed that seemingly no one else has mentioned is that these have actually gotten rid of the dual aperture mode. I was there messing around with the device and I realised that it just wasn't there anymore. I asked a Samsung rep and they kind of forgot that dual aperture was a thing that ever even existed. So I'm not surprised. But it is still interesting to see that this feature that was touted as being really cool is now gone. It was kind of cool, don't get me wrong, but having tested it with my Note 10, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. But hey, a feature's a feature and it's a shame to see it go. The only difference between the S20 and the S20 Plus camera-wise is that the Plus has a time of flight sensor, so an additional camera that isn't really a camera. But it should mean you get better depth effects, so that's fun. Other than that, they both come with 128GB of UFS 3.0 storage, which is blazing fast, as well as 8GB of RAM, so that's basically all your spec needs. Getting to use the 120Hz display was amazing, but I kind of am glad that I can't. You see, here's the thing, these displays behind me are only 60Hz, which is fine because I primarily use it for like video editing and stuff, but I've been thinking of upgrading them for a while, and I can't help but feel like having a 120Hz phone makes you realise just how 60Hz these screens are. It happened to me after like 5 minutes with the S20 series, and I can only imagine how much owning a phone makes that happen. You see, you don't notice it when you step up. It's not the step from 60Hz to 120Hz that feels huge. It's the step back down. It's coming from 120Hz, which you've now gotten used to, back down to 60, you go, ooh, that's what I used to use? For me, what's significantly more interesting than the aperture or the number of pixels is actually the sensor size. They are significantly larger than the S11 series, which means you get significantly greater natural bokeh, as well as better low light performance without having to pump it up digitally. It is also the thing that means that you end up with a large camera bump on the back though, so it's a bit of give and take. That being said, I can't help but feel like if you have it in a case, the bump disappears anyway, so it's a bit of a whatever as someone who rocks my phone in a case. The S20 has a 4000 mAh battery, with the Plus having an extra 500 mAh. They both support 25 watt fast charging, 15 watt wireless charging, and 9 watt reverse charging. The S20 and the S20 Plus are really great devices that are reasonably priced if you look at the price of flagships right now. £800 or £900 isn't ridiculous, it's still technically ever so slightly cheaper than an iPhone 11 Pro, which means you kinda get away with it. On the other hand, we have the S20 Ultra, where Samsung clearly just threw everything at a wall and were like, what's the most ridiculous phone we can make? Camera-wise, it has a 108 megapixel camera, which is incredible. I got to try out the 100 times space zoom, and it's honestly unlike anything you've ever seen. I saw all the specs on a piece of paper before Samsung actually formally announced it and did their Unpacked event, but seeing it all on paper just doesn't do it justice. The 108 megapixels, the 100 times zoom, and the 5000 milliamp hour battery. This phone is very much all the bleeding edge tech you can pour into one device. Even if the 45 watt charging isn't exactly the fastest in the world, it still gets you from 0 to 100 in just over an hour. And that's incredible on a 5000 milliamp hour battery. On top of that, the selfie camera goes from 10 megapixels on the S20 and the S20 Plus to 40 megapixels on the S20 Ultra. And honestly, all of these cameras are just insane. I'll need to do some extensive testing, but the little bit of time I got with it just led to some incredible photos that were all truly unreal. The ability to take a 108 megapixel photo, zoom in what seems like a ridiculous amount, and still have 20 megapixels to work with is just crazy. You can completely reframe photos. Oh, and storage-wise, the S20 Ultra is unreal. It peaks out at 512 gigabytes of storage with 16 gigabytes of RAM. That's more than most laptops. It is truly insane. And on top of all of that, they've slimmed down the curve. In a year where Huawei had their waterfall display and companies have been really trying to see how much curve they can get, Samsung have slowly been shaving away at it. The Samsung Note Edge had a massive drop off, and since then every single device they've released has had a more and more subtle edge, and the S20 is no exception. All I can say is, so far they seem like incredible devices, with software and hardware that is just unreal. In fact, the single take camera mode is the thing that excites me most, and I'm gonna be messing around with that to no end. As someone who captures video on a frequent basis, clearly, the idea of having the single take mode, which captures with every single camera simultaneously, is just incredible, because even if you don't need it, you never know what you might find. So thank you so much to Samsung KX for having me out to try all of their new devices. They are incredible. If you want to find out more about the Z Flip, then check it out. It's right here. It's gonna, you're gonna really want one. It was cool. Just click that video. Subscribe if you want to see more videos, and I'll see you guys next time.